All right, Shabbat Shalom, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another sermon here at Nazarene Way Church. And you'll have to forgive me. My microphone was out of battery, so we're just going to deliver this sermon to you. And usually we have a little bit better audio, so you're going to have to bear with me. I'm going to put subtitles on this video so that you can tune in because we have a very important and special sermon today that I'm going to be sharing with you. And if you are new here, get ready. You're in for a ride. We are here restoring the original religion of Jesus the Nazarene, the Judean sect, pre-Christianity, pre-Roman Pagan cult influence, pre-Paul influence. I hope you like my new shirt. Says less Paul with a Paul of Tarsus on it. And this shirt was created by my friends at the Jesus Way podcast, Aaron Abke and James Benefico, who have a fantastic channel. You should also check out Cam Waters and Christ Conspiracy. You should check out Chris Sartain and the Ebionite Mystic channel. You should check out David Natsari's channel. He has fantastic critical information and knowledge about the Ebionites and the Nazarenes. And what we believe is essentially we believe that Jesus was the Son of Man, thus not necessarily the Son of God. Okay, that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And Jesus believed in one God, not some Trinitarian nonsense that was invented by Tertullian in the second, third century, right? We believe in actually following the original religion of Jesus and his disciples. We believe that listening to Jesus and how he restored the true nature, beauty of God and the beauty of the religion of the Hebrews was tantamount to why his message spread so widely and why it's so important for us to try to embody and follow the true religion of Jesus, not Paul of Tarsus, right? Anyway, what we're going to focus on today in our sermon, hopefully you can see this and and again, I'm going to put subtitles on this video so that hopefully pick up the words that I'm saying better than the echoey sound you may be hearing. And today we're going to focus on one important fact. I'm going to actually move this forward here a little bit so that you can hear me a little bit better. And we are going to focus on the fact that Jesus never claimed to be God. Now, before we dive into that, let's talk about something going on right now. So I was on Twitter the other day, or X, and scrolling. And for some reason, X in their algorithm thinks that I'm like a fan of Catholicism or something. Because they serve me all this like latest and recent news involved in Catholicism. And I want to show you something. So here's what's going on in Catholicism. On November 4th, the Cardinal Fernandez will be presenting a new doctrinal note. The Master Populi Fidelis is to be on certain Mary, meaning Mary, the Mother Mary titles. How should we ascribe her titles? How should we worship her? How should we, pray to her and bow down to her and partake in idol worshiping, which, by the way, violates the second commandment that Moses gave us, right? That Jesus would be dismayed to see us all doing, right? So this cardinal, this guy, probably, let's be honest, there's probably a 50% chance that he is a pedophile or has some pedophile tendencies, okay? Or there's something, a little bit crooked or wrong with him, okay? Anyway, it is to be on certain Marian titles in relation to Mary's cooperation in the work of salvation. Many theologians have long awaited the formal declaration of Mary's co-redemption. That is like, how do we pray to her, bow down to her, and worship her? And, I'm going to show you, just a few of the tweets. The next tweet comes from Bree Solst, who, and this is where you see the slippery slope of idol worshiping. She writes, I am both insanely excited and absolutely terrified at the same time. Terrified that, this cardinal is going to basically tell her how to think and how to pray to her idol worshiping idol that she probably has all around in her house laid out at her house. So she says, I pray that Pope Leo handles this right. It is time to proclaim the fifth Marian dogma. Please. Like, let's proclaim the fifth Marian dogma. It's like, fifth Marian dogma? When did Jesus outline to his disciples, to people in anywhere in the, the writings of the Gospels? The earliest one being Mark, Matthew, the Gospel of the Hebrews, probably is even early version of Matthew. We find Jesus not once saying, hey, you know what? After I get crucified, after I died, I want you to go out and concoct a bunch of quote unquote dogmas so that you can tell people how to think. Give it to me straight. What is your expectation for this? When she's talking about the Vatican to weigh in on Mary's role in salvation with the doctrine document on November 4th. So basically, the Vatican, a bunch of cigarette smoking cardinals and bishops and people that wear white pagan, caps on their head are going to tell, 1.2 billion people, Catholics, and then by extension, Christians, how to think, how to pray to Mary. Please give us the Marian dogma. That's, just the slippery slope of what we see. Then we find another tweet. This is just one of, there's so many. I just pulled up, I'm like, okay, I just searched Catholicism or Catholic and Mary, and this one popped up. It's 1.2 thousand likes, 165 comments, and there's this hot-headed, uber Catholic that says Protestants, basically anyone who's not like, Catholic, you will never be based so long as you fail to acknowledge Mary, the Mother of God, your mother, the Queen of the Messianic Kingdom, the new Ark of the Covenant, and the new Eve. By the way, I don't even think he has any idea what Messianic, the term, actually means, which we're going to dive into in a second. The Queen of the Davidic Kingdom of Christ is the King's mother. And look at that. The worshiping Mary, worshiping the little, baby Jesus, and proclaiming him to be God. They tried to proclaim Mary to be God by extension. And then we count like not one, but like how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Like over a dozen angels and more idols. Like what you will see here, if you just open your mind and eyes, you will see idol worshiping all over the place when it comes to Catholicism and by extension, Christianity. That's, 2 billion people out there misled by the Roman Pagan cultic ideas of what Jesus stood for in his original religion. Then we have another tweet, and this is something you see all over the place. It's basically, there's this circle jerk on Twitter between Catholics and Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox people going, oh, my religion, Catholicism is the most aesthetic religion out there. And then the Eastern Orthodox people come back and they post photos of all of their idol worshiping and go, oh, no, Eastern Orthodox is, it's all about. And, Jesus would come back here and say, what in the hell are you doing? He would overturn these peoples. He would overturn every single structure in here. Look at all of these idols up here. Look at all those idols up there on the ceiling. Those are all the saints. Look at that saint right there. Look at all of these statues of different idols. Look at all of these individuals getting a cushy cut of the tithe of 1.2 billion Catholics there so that they can hang out, smoke cigarettes, hang out with their boys, and pray, idol worshiping, and just basically, have cushy jobs, right? That is modern day religion. That is modern day Catholicism and what we see out there, just to illustrate to you this slippery slope. And then last but not least, the man that we're supposed to pray to as Catholics, Mr. Pope Leo, there he is, blessing and, basically an ice cube, right? He was at some global summit for global warming, and he came out and said, oh, since I'm God, since I'm the only one that talks to God, being the Pope, I'm going to bless this ice cube to prevent global warming or something like that. I didn't even dive into the details because it's so absolutely ridiculous. And this is the slippery slope that proclaiming more than one God, a Trinity or whatever have you, has. Jesus knew this. and it's hidden in plain sight. So, with that out of the way, welcome aboard. Now we're going to actually dive into some of the backing, some of the literature that we have in which we know that Jesus believed in one God, the Father, right? One God, not I am God. You should pray to me. And so we live in an age where devotion has been redirected from God to his servants. And then, meaning servants, meaning Jesus, his servant, right? Jesus called himself Ben Adam, meaning the Son of Man, in Aramaic, the Son of Man, over and over. And scholars are still confused on what Son of Man means. And so, here we are in an age with now like 1.2 billion Catholics and over 2 billion Christians that have redirected their devotion from God to his servants, meaning servants, meaning to Jesus, to Mary, and then from servants to mythological idols like Mary, right? Who gave them, had a virgin birth, which comes from a misreading of the term in Isaiah 7:14, where they mistake a young maiden for virgin, right? And then, in the I believe it's the Ascension of James, which is an apocryphal text, not even in the canonical New Testament. We get this idea from the Ascension of James that there's this, or the Proto-Evangelium of James, that there is this concept of Mary's perpetual virginity invented in this non-canonical apocryphal thing that the Catholics have then adopted into their dogma. So no longer are they worshiping servants. They're worshiping mythological idols that kind of ascribe to the pagan environment of Rome. And then from idols to ice cubes, with the Pope blessing a frickin' ice cube. Jesus the Nazarene never claimed to be God. He never wanted to be associated with idol worship. He never wanted to have people hoist up and tattoo, Roman torture devices, meaning the crosses, all over them and worship those things. Jesus was the anointed one. He was the Messiah. He was the chosen son, but not the one who anointed him. Shocker. I know this is almost heretical to say, but there is one God to worship. Not three, not the Trinity, not Jesus being God. And we know that Jesus's original followers and the late stage followers, which they later on became known as the Ebionim or the Ebionites, they did not see Jesus as God. And don't take it from me, take it from the patristics, from the church fathers, such as the psychopath, angry Epi, we call him, Epiphanius, which we'll get into in a second. But first, let's talk about the Clementine Homilies, 1615. The Clementine Homilies are, there's an argument that the Clementine Homilies, which you'll find if you research it, they call it the pseudo-Clementines, right? Because it was pseudonymously written, just like all the Gospels, besides probably Luke, were pseudonymously written. But for some reason, we don't call, the Gospel of Mark the pseudo-Gospel of Mark, which is another, Catholic attempt or Christian attempt to cover it up. But the Clementine Homilies is probably very likely based on the same source material as we find in the New Testament. And here we have in the Clementine Homilies 6:15, it says, "Our Lord neither asserted that he was God, nor taught his disciples to do so." Meaning taught his disciples to call him God. But he taught them that he was the Messiah, which we'll come back to. Then, and it's hidden in plain sight, we even have written in John 14:28 that the Father is greater than I. If you are God, and God is you, then why would you say the Father is greater than I? Right? Because the Father is God, and you are not God. You are the Messiah. You are the one that came back to restore the original message of God. After the lying pens of the scribes, essentially bastardized the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, the scriptures, which is what Jesus was very well schooled in. And then we have John 5, verse 30, when he says, "I can do nothing on my own." do nothing on my own without God, my Father who is in heaven. Then we have Mark 10:18, which Mark is what scholars believe to be at least the text we have, the earliest written gospel that's written earlier than Matthew, Luke, John. I would argue that Mark is not written for the Gospel of the Hebrews, the Aramaic actual text, which is essentially, what we have, the Hebrew Gospel of Matthew. And anyway, Mark 10, verse 18, it says, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone." So here we have Jesus saying, hey, why do you call me good? No one is good besides God alone. He's separating himself from God. Jesus never claimed to be God. And we have accounts in the Clementine homilies that we know this. Now, here's another one. The late Nazarenes, the Ebionim, the Ebionites, which means poor ones, we know, thanks to Epiphanius in the Panarion. The Panarion means the medicine cabinet, or basically, Epiphanius was writing against all of these heretical groups. And in the irony of all ironies, about in the 4th century, 300 years after the death of Jesus the Nazarene, his group, his religion, Jesus' religion, the Nazarenes, and the later stage, the Ebionim, or the Ebionites, the poor ones, blessed are the poor, right? His community, the Jerusalem poor, became declared as heretics by the Roman Pagan cult of Catholicism and the church fathers, such as Epiphanius. We are all grateful, though, for Epiphanius for preserving and going on a rampage against these heretical sects of people, two of which are at least two of which are the remnants of Jesus's actual religion, because thanks to Epiphanius going on a rage against the machine rampage against the quote-unquote heretical groups, we know about the heretical groups because, unfortunately, all of the texts that the disciples reference are lost. Like the Gospel of the Hebrews, we only have in fragments, and thanks to Epiphanius, we now know a lot more about them because Epiphanius was attacking them. And so here we have Epiphanius declaring that the late Nazarenes, the Ebionim, they maintain that Christ was a man born of Mary and Joseph, and that he was chosen and anointed by God's Spirit. Note the word anointed. The Nazarenes believed not in a divine impostor, but in a divinely appointed man. They believed that God appointed Jesus as the Messiah and anointed him to restore the original message of God. So let's talk about the slippery slope of idolatry. So when you elevate a man to God, you blur the line between creator and creation. Psalm 115, verse 5, we find that it says, "They have mouths, but do not speak, eyes, but do not see." In John 4:23, it says, "True worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth." This is why it is so critical that you absolve yourself and pull yourself away from the idol worshiping tendencies in religion that you have unfortunately been indoctrinated into. Now, let's talk about the meaning of the word Messiah. Messiah comes from the Hebrew term, which I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. My friend Aaron Abke is a much better at pronouncing Hebrew. He studies the Hebrew, but Messiah is how you pronounce it. It's the Hebrew word Messiah. It means anointed one. That's what Messiah means. So if Jesus was the Messiah, if he was anointed, then the question is simply this: anointed by who? Who was Jesus anointed by? Brodus, get out here. This is one of our congregation members, Brodus. Let me move him, bro. Brodus. By the way, we are starting as a digital synagogue as we grow this thing, and get ready. We are about to grow this thing into a physical church. And Brodus, you're still invited if we grow this thing into a visible synagogue movement at church, right? Or when we do. But until then, you'll have to pardon the manners of some of our congregant members, like Brodus Maximus Shepherd III. And what you need to focus on, let's get back to it, is if Jesus means the Messiah, and if Messiah means Messiah, right? The anointed one, then who was Jesus anointed by? It's simple. He was anointed by God. And if Jesus were God, then Messiah would be meaningless, for God cannot anoint himself. That is the main thing to remember. And guess what happened? The early editors, copyists, and scribes of the Gospels wrote this out and wrote this, essentially, this idea out. And this is why the Council of Nicaea happened. There was this huge divide within the church because it was written in plain sight that Jesus, was anointed and adopted by God at the baptism of John the Baptist. He was not born of this virgin birth, which was prepended into the beginning of Matthew. And it was prepended in there because someone misread Isaiah 7:14 to mean the Messiah is going to be born of a virgin, which in reality, it was completely taken out of context, number one, and number of the story. And then number two, it meant young maiden, which is funny. No, it's important that we pray as he prayed, meaning pray as Jesus prayed. And in Matthew 6, verse 9, he starts with, "Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name." Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Jesus did not say, pray to me. Jesus did not say, you need to pray to me and believe in me in order to be resurrected. Guess who said that? Paul of Tarsus, the narcissistic psychopath that was really, admonished by a lot of the apostles. Jesus did not say, pray to me. Jesus did not say, I am God. He taught us to pray directly to the Father, the one who is in heaven. We worship the same God Jesus worshiped. And if you're groveling all over Twitter, hoping that some, cigarette cheese smoking cardinal, or some pope that's touching an ice cube and blessing an ice cube out there is going to, tell you what to believe, then the only person that you should look to for who to believe and how to act is Jesus. Jesus said, worship God, our Father in heaven. Hallowed be your name, not hallowed be my name. So the warning and hope, let's talk about that. Whenever devotion is transferred from the invisible God to a visible image, such as the statues that we saw and those immaculate, there's a building going up, an Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox building that's going up that is costing over $300 million to build. Don't you think that would be better spent on what Jesus cared about, serving the poor, caring for the poor? James the Just, Jesus' brother, focused on his ministry. So the second we go from transferring our devotion from the invisible God to the visible image, we leave the way, capitalized way. We know Jesus internally called himself a disciple of the way, followers of the way. Same with his disciples. Externally, they were known as the Nazarenes. And here's the deal. I know a lot of you watching this, if I have, essentially, if I have targeted the title of this video properly, I've probably brought in a lot of people that are still brainwashed by the Catholic dogma. And so you're decrying heresy. But you are the one that really needs to wake up. And the good news is that the door of repentance is still open. It is still important for you to return to simplicity, not to brag about the aesthetic, beautiful church and gold, $300 million that you've invested into groveling over yourself, but focus on how many people you got down on a knee to that were on the streets, that were poor, that were struggling, you talked to, you cared about. That is what Jesus cared about. So, the bottom line is this. Jesus never said, I am God. He said, I am sent by God. He never said, worship me. He said, follow. He never said, pray to me. He said, when you pray, say, our Father. Pray to the same God, the one and only God that Jesus. So let's start off and kick things off in the closing of today's sermon, with our very own prayer. And that is this. Close your eyes and say this: Eternal Father, you alone are holy, righteous, good. You anointed your servant, Jesus the Nazarene, to show us the way back to you. Deliver us from idolatry and confusion. Teach us to worship you in spirit and truth. Amen. If you prayed that prayer, if your heart is open to actually walking in the humble way of Jesus the Nazarene, I invite you to go ahead and click like and subscribe to this video. Also, I invite you to watch the videos of some of our fellow Nazarenes that are also restoring and walking the way, like Aaron Apke, James Benefico, Cameron Waters, Chris Sartain, and many others. Search the Jesus Way podcast. Go on Aaron Apke's channel and follow his videos as well. Go and YouTube James Tabor and check out Keith Akers and his book, The Lost Religion of Jesus. You are about to dive into a whole new world and understanding a richer, better faith than any idol ever given. Peace and love, Shabbat Shalom, and I will see you next week.